Diseases, they're everywhere. That's the reality of life. We fight it until it goes away or we die from it. Today, medicine gives us an advantage our ancestors could only dream of, but it wasn't always like this. Let's rewind to the deadliest disease in human history, the Black Plague. When sickness came, fear took over, and from fear came a figure. A man dressed in all black, his mask shaped like a bird. When he came around the block, you knew death was coming. He was the plague doctor. During the Black Death in the 14th century, he didn't exist yet, but his image is tied to the horrors of the plague. It didn't begin in Europe. It started near Central Asia, what we know as China and Mongolia today. During the siege of Kaffa in 1346, the Mongols were at war fighting the Genoese colony. The two sides were fighting over power and trade, but soon the Mongols would fight something worse, disease. Mongols kept losing soldiers, so they loaded plague-ridden bodies over the city walls. It was the first case of biological warfare in history. The traders in Kaffa got up out of there and left by ship, not knowing they carried the Black Death with them. By 1347, the ships from Kaffa reached Messina, Sicily. The sailors were already dying of the plague. They had black boils all over their body called buboes. That's where the name bubonic plague got its name. Locals who got too close ended up getting the plague from the dead sailors. The plague took over and the bodies were piling up all over the street. Messina expelled any ships coming to their port, but it was already too late. Over half of the population died from the plague. The plague spread so fast because of how it was carried. The fleas that lived off rats from the ships off Kaffa bit humans. From there, human-to-human contact passed the disease. There were different forms of the disease. Bubonic, which attacked the lymph nodes, pneumonic, which infected the lungs, and septicemic, which poisoned the blood. All these together were the triforce of diseases. From Sicily, the plague went wherever the trade routes were, traveling with people city to city. This was how it started, its world tour through Europe. By the end of 1347, it crept up in Genoa and Venice, which were Italy's biggest ports. In Genoa, fear spread through the city faster than the disease. People believed the outside air carried the disease, so they closed their doors. Ships were burned and blocked from coming into the city. Most of the population died from this. In Venice, their port became a super spreader. Bodies piled up in the boats and moved to the burial spots. The water turned black from the ashes of the burning plague. Quarantina Giorni, which means 40 days, meaning quarantine, started here, but now the plague was up 3-1 in Italy. Its next target would be next door, France. By 1348, it got into French territory. It hit Marseille first. It spread through the Rhine River where the Pope lived. Pope Clement isolated himself. He sat between two fires to not get any bad air. The Rhine River was flooded with dead people. The disease pushed through Paris, France. Just like the other cities that had the plague, the smell of death was everywhere. Bodies piled up so much that France had to create new cemeteries. Almost 100,000 of the population died. The bodies would be in what's known as the catacombs of Paris. Barcelona was up next as their new victims. It was one of the busiest ports until the Marseille ships carried death with it. Half the city died in a few months. The King of Aragon lost his wife, daughter, and nephew, wiping away some of the royals with its death count. In Seville, priests marched the streets chanting prayers, but the sickness kept claiming more bodies. It left behind abandoned houses and families shut in their own homes. At the port of Malcolm Regis, the plague reached London. The crowded city infested with rats was just right for the death. By autumn, thousands were dead. The ground outside the city walls was turned into a mass grave site known as Charterhouse Cemetery. 50,000 were buried here. By 1349, the plague moved to Cologne. Priests, doctors, and nobles all died side by side. People accused Jews of poisoning wells, killing them off in brutal massacres across Germany. In Hamburg, ships coming into the port carried dead sailors, labeling it ships of ghosts. The streets were all empty. Only death was present in the air. Panic in Switzerland caused anti-Semitism in the area. Massacres happened in Basel and Zurich over accusations of well poisoning. By 1350, the plague made it to Scandinavia from ghost ships from England. One story tells of a Norwegian ship that drifted from Bergen, filled with only the dead. Locals boarded the ship from curiosity, and in weeks new victims would die claiming the city. In 1351, it came to Poland and Hungary. Lower trade traffic in the area decreased deaths in the area, and its isolation and sparse population slowed the plague, but it reached the Mongol edges, coming full circle. At the end, it killed 25 to 50 million people in Europe. By the 1350s, most of Europe's population was exterminated. Cities were full of death and the streets were silent. Now these places were graveyards. From this darkness came a symbol, a man dressed in all black, a wide-brimmed hat, leather gloves, and a mask shaped like a bird's beak. The plague doctor. He wasn't around during the 14th century plague. He came later in the 1600s when new waves of the plague hit the streets. His outfit was for protection from the plague. His beak had herbs to protect from the bad air, glass eyes protected from miasma, and a cane to examine his patients from a distance. To his patients, he was the real-life Grim Reaper. In cities like Rome, Paris, and London, the plague was the healer and omen. When you saw him, death was near. He became more than a doctor. He was fear, medicine, and death at once. When death walks among us, it often wears the mask of the living.